At exactly 11:47 p.m., Billionaire CEO Adrian Cole walked into a small roadside diner that he had never noticed before. He had just left a disastrous business meeting. His company was facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and for the first time in years, the man who seemed to have everything had no idea what he was going to do next. The diner was almost empty. A tired cashier was counting receipts, an old couple was finishing their coffee, and somewhere behind the kitchen doors, someone was quietly crying. Adrian stopped. He wasn't the kind of man who usually interfered in other people's lives. In his world, problems were solved with contracts, lawyers, and money. But that night, the sound of someone trying desperately not to sob caught his attention. He followed it to the kitchen door and heard a woman's trembling voice whisper, "Please, just give me one more day." Adrian opened the door, and what he saw made him forget all about his own problems. A young waitress named Elena stood alone beside the kitchen counter. Her uniform was slightly stained from a 12-hour shift, her hair was loosely tied back, and tears were running down her face. She quickly wiped them away when she noticed Adrian. "Sir, the kitchen is closed," she whispered. Adrian stared at her. "I'm not here for food." Elena looked nervous. "Then why are you here? I heard you crying." Her expression immediately changed. "I wasn't crying." Adrian gave her a quiet look. "You don't have to pretend with me." Elena lowered her eyes. "Please leave." Adrian didn't move. Instead, he noticed that Elena instinctively pulled her sleeves down over her arms. She seemed frightened that he had noticed. "Did someone hurt you?" he asked. Elena's eyes filled with tears again. "No." "Are you sure?" She nodded. But her voice was barely audible. "Some things are better left alone." Adrian had heard those words before. Usually from people who were protecting someone else. Before he could ask another question, the kitchen door swung open. The diner manager, Victor, walked inside. His expression immediately hardened when he saw Adrian. "Everything okay here?" Elena stepped backward. "Yes, Mr. Victor." Victor looked at her. "Then get back to work." Adrian noticed something strange. Elena didn't argue. She simply nodded. Victor turned toward Adrian. "Sir, if you're finished, I'd appreciate it if you return to your table." Adrian looked at Elena. Then at Victor. Something didn't feel right. He quietly walked away. But he didn't leave. Instead, he sat at a booth where he could see the kitchen entrance. For the next 20 minutes, he watched. Every time Victor came near Elena, she became nervous. Every time the phone rang, she froze. And every time someone mentioned the word home, her expression changed. Finally, Adrian stood. He walked to the counter and placed several $100 bills beside his untouched coffee. The cashier stared. "Sir, that's far too much." Adrian shook his head. "It's not for the coffee." He looked toward Elena. "It's for the waitress." Elena immediately approached him. "No. I can't accept that." "Why?" "Because I didn't earn it." Adrian smiled faintly. "Then earn it tomorrow." She looked confused. "How?" "By showing up." Elena didn't understand. Adrian continued. "Sometimes showing up for another day is the hardest job in the world." For the first time that night, Elena smiled. It lasted only a second. But Adrian noticed. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Adrian returned to the diner. Elena was there. But she looked exhausted. He ordered coffee. "You're back," she said. "So are you." She smiled. "I have to work." Adrian nodded. "Do you?" She looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means you shouldn't have to be afraid of your workplace." Elena looked toward the kitchen. "Mr. Victor isn't a bad person." Adrian didn't answer. He knew she was protecting someone. Then Elena whispered something that changed everything. "He's holding my sister's debt over my head." Adrian's expression became serious. "What debt?" Elena looked around before speaking. "My younger sister needed emergency treatment last year. We couldn't afford it. Victor said he'd lend us the money. And? We've been paying him ever since. How much? Elena hesitated. More than we borrowed. Adrian's eyes narrowed. How much more? Almost 4 times. Adrian immediately understood. It wasn't a simple loan. Victor had trapped her. But Elena shook her head. Please don't get involved. Why? Because every time someone tries to help me, things get worse. Adrian leaned forward. Then maybe you've never had the right person help you. Elena looked at him. Who are you? Adrian paused. He had never told her. I'm Adrian. Adrian what? He sighed. Adrian Cole. Elena froze. Her eyes widened. You mean the Adrian Cole? He nodded. The CEO? Yes. She immediately stepped away. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know what you thought of me before you knew how much money I had. Elena stared at him. Then she laughed through her tears. Then you're probably disappointed. Why? Because I thought you were just a rude customer. Adrian smiled. That's actually the nicest thing anyone has said to me all week. For the first time, Elena laughed. But their conversation was interrupted by Victor. He walked toward them angrily. Elena. Office. Now. She immediately became silent. Adrian stood. She isn't going anywhere. Victor looked at him. This is my employee. Adrian calmly replied. Then treat her like one. Victor laughed. You don't know anything about this place. Adrian looked directly into his eyes. You're right. He took out his phone. That's why I'm going to find out. Victor's smile disappeared. That afternoon, Adrian's legal team began investigating the diner. Within hours, they discovered dozens of questionable loan agreements. Victor had done the same thing to other employees. He had taken advantage of people who couldn't afford lawyers. But there was one document that shocked Adrian. Elena's sister's original hospital debt had already been paid. Someone had anonymously covered it months earlier. Victor had been collecting money from Elena anyway. Adrian looked at Elena. Did you know this? She shook her head. No. Then you don't owe him anything. Elena began crying. Not from fear this time. From relief. I thought I'd never get out. Adrian looked at her. You're out. But Elena wasn't ready to believe it. A week later, the truth became public. Victor was removed from the diner. The employees who had been trapped by his fake debts were released from their agreements. And Elena finally received something she hadn't had in years. A choice. Adrian offered her a position at one of his companies. But she refused. I don't want a job because you feel sorry for me. Adrian smiled. I don't feel sorry for you. Then why? Because you're the strongest person I've met in a long time. Elena looked down. Strong? Yes. You saw me crying. Exactly. He paused. Strong people cry too. They just keep going afterward. Months passed. Elena eventually became the manager of a new restaurant Adrian opened, not because he rescued her, but because she proved she could lead. She hired people who needed second chances. She created a policy guaranteeing employees could ask for help without fear. And every night before closing, she would walk through the kitchen and make sure nobody was crying alone. One evening, Adrian visited. Elena smiled when she saw him. You're late. I had a meeting. Excuse accepted? He looked around the restaurant. It was full. Families were laughing. Employees were smiling. And Elena stood in the middle of it all. Adrian quietly said, You changed this place. Elena shook her head. No. She looked at him. You gave me a door. And you walked through it. She smiled. Maybe we both needed that. Adrian reached for her hand. I think you're right. Years later, people would talk about how a billionaire CEO had discovered a waitress in a diner and completely changed her life. But Elena always corrected them. He didn't save me, she would say. He simply reminded me that I was worth saving. And Adrian would always add, Sometimes the person who looks like they need help is actually the person who teaches you how to live. That night, the diner lights glowed warmly against the dark street. Elena stood behind the counter, watching families laugh together. She touched the sleeves of her uniform, then smiled. Those old painful memories no longer controlled her. They were simply chapters in a story she had survived. And Adrian? He no longer measured his success by billions, skyscrapers, or business deals. He measured it by moments like this. Because he had finally learned something money could never teach him. A person's greatest value isn't what they own, what they wear, or what they've survived. It's the light they carry after surviving it. ***. And sometimes, all it takes is one person noticing that light to change an entire life. Years later, people remembered Adrian as the billionaire who changed a waitress's life. But Elena always told them they had the story backward. "He didn't save me," she would say with a smile. "He simply gave me the courage to save myself." The scars that once made her hide her arms became reminders of everything she had survived, not symbols of weakness. And Adrian learned that night that wealth could buy buildings, companies, and luxury, but it could never buy the feeling of knowing you had given someone hope when they had almost lost it. Sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't someone coming to rescue you, it's finding someone who reminds you that you were strong enough to rescue yourself all along.